Great. Good morning. It's Wednesday, April 21st, and we are here gathered as the Joint Standing Committee on the Environment and Natural Resources. We have a handful of work sessions scheduled for today that are going to happen in this order. First will be LD 678 and then LD 988, 1028, 1038, and 1089. So that's the suite of bills from Senator Keim about site law review. So we'll cover those first. And then we'll move into 1097 is part of that suite as well. And then we'll do 1161. And then we will transition over to the bills that Dan is helping us with, and we'll hear 226, 802, 872, 909, and 946. We might switch that order around based on Representative Hanley's presence today, and he's got a couple things going on in other spaces, as do actually a lot of our committee members for the next stretch of weeks. There'll be a lot of popping in and out. One other thing I wanted to mention to you guys is when you have your screen off on YouTube, it doesn't show your name as you being present. So for the folks out there watching on YouTube, just so you know, sometimes there are more committee members present in the meeting who are listening but don't have their screen on, just if that's helpful going forward. And we do have one bill that we're going to do a reconsideration on, which is 780. Is that correct? 780 is the number. Okay. And I think there's language review. Let me just see. Hold on. Okay. Maybe not. Deirdre and Dan, is there a language review also?
There's nothing this week.
Nothing this week. Okay, great. So that's the plan for this morning. Why don't we go ahead and get started with introductions, and we'll start with Representative Bell.
Good morning. Art Bell, House District 47, which is Yarmouth, Chesapeake, and Long Island.
And Representative Ziegler.
Good morning. I'm unmuted, but I'm muted too. I'm Representative Paige Ziegler from District 96, which is in Waldo County, and it consists of the 7 towns of Belmont, Liberty, Lincolnville, Montville, Morrill, Palermo, and Searsmont. And I have a student here who's doing a paper on the legislature. So that's why I'm masked this morning.
Wonderful. Welcome to you and your student. Representative Dudera. Oh, Representative Dudera.
I'm sorry. Hi, Vicki Dudera here. I represent District 94, Camden, Rockport, and the island of Islesboro. Good to be with everybody today. Thank you.
Representative Johansson.
Good morning. Chris Johansson. I represent the 18 organized towns in southern Aroostook County. Thank you.
Representative O'Connor.
Good morning, I'm Beth O'Connor. I represent the individuals of House District 5, which is Berwick and part of North Berwick.
Representative Gramlich.
Thank you, Senator. I am Lori Gramlich, and I represent House District 13, which is Old Orchard Beach. And I will be in and out today. I have a number of other commitments in other committees.
And Representative Bloom.
Good morning. I'm Representative Lydia Bloom. I represent House District 3 in York.
And Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Rick Bennett. I have the honor of representing 13 towns in Oxford and Cumberland counties in the beautiful foothills and lakes region of Western Maine.
And Representative Tucker.
Good morning. I represent House District 50 in Brunswick, which is famously surrounded by the mighty Androscoggin, Merry Meeting Bay, the New Meadows River, and the coastal mudflats of Middle Bay and McCoy Bay. Also beautiful area. Thank you.
And I'm Stacy Brenner. I represent Senate District 30, which includes the gorgeous Scarborough Marsh. We're also joined by Deirdre Snyder and Dan Tartikoff, who are our analysts from OPLA, and Sabrina Carey, who's our clerk. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with the bills that Deirdre is going to help us with this morning. I think probably the best first step would be to address the bills that Senator Keim has asked us to vote ought not to pass. And those include, hold on, let's get myself to my right page here. Okay, that's 678, 1089, and 1097. So those Senator Keim has asked us to vote ought not to pass. Yes, Senator Bennett.
Madam Chair, I move ought not to pass on LD 678.
Do we have a second? Representative Bloom?
Second.
All right, great. I think without any further discussion, I think we're ready for a vote. Sabrina, are you ready? Good morning. It's nice to see your face. You're muted.
Okay. Good morning. I apologize. So we're on LD 678 ought not to pass.
That's right.
Senator Brenner.
Yes.
Representative Tucker.
Yes.
Senator Bennett.
Yes.
Representative Hanley. Absent. Senator Carney. Absent. Representative Bell.
Yes.
Representative Bloom.
Yes.
Representative Dudera.
Yes.
Representative Gramlich. Absent. Representative Johansson.
No.
Representative O'Connor.
Yes.
Representative Toole.
Ziegler.
Absent. Representative Ziegler.
Yes.
All right. 8 yes, 1 no. Need clarification on Representative Johansson's minority report.
Representative Johansson, do you have a minority report for Sabrina? Representative Johansson, you're on mute. Okay, maybe we'll circle back around for that.
Sure.
Okay, so next up is 1089. Oh, Representative Johansson, you're back. Did you want to chime in about a minority report? You're on mute.
Ought not to pass.
Okay, the vote was, the motion was ought not to pass.
Ought to pass. Thank you.
Okay, great. So now we're on to 1089. Yes, Senator Bennett.
Sorry,
Whoops. Yes, Deirdre.
did he say ought to pass? I wasn't clear. It's a concept draft,
His
So-
vote, his minority report is ought to pass.
but it's the concept draft. So there needs to be language.
Okay. Representative Johansson, did you want to consider that?
No. No, I just want to go ought to pass.
But it's a concept draft, so there's no language developed in the bill.
This is a bill that Senator Keim has asked us to vote ought not to pass.
Could I change my vote?
Of course.
Ought not to pass.
Thank you. Okay, next up, 1089. Yes, Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With respect to 1089 and the wishes of the sponsor, I move ought not to pass.
Is there a second?
Second.
Representative O'Connor is a second. I believe we are ready for a vote. Ought not to pass on 1089.
Okay. Senator Brenner,
Yes.
Representative Tucker,
Yes.
Senator Bennett,
Yes.
Representative Hanley, absent. Senator Carney, absent. Representative Bell,
Yes.
Representative Bloom,
Yes.
Representative Dudera,
Yes.
Representative Gramlich, absent. Representative Johansson, absent. Representative O'Connor,
Yes.
Representative Toole, absent. Representative Ziegler,
Yes.
8 yes, 5 absent. Oh, unless Representative Johansson came back.
Representative Johansson, did you want to vote?
Johansson votes yes.
Okay, thank you.
So 9 and 4 absent.
Senator Bennett, did you have your hand up residually or did you?
Well, I was presuming that we were moving on to 1097. If the
I think
vote-
we're ready. Yes.
If you're ready for a motion there, again, in keeping with the wishes of the sponsor, I'd like to move ought not to pass on LD 1097.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Representative O'Connor is a second. And I think that brings us to a vote.
Senator Brenner,
Yes.
Representative Tucker,
Yes.
Senator Bennett,
Yes.
Representative Hanley, absent. Senator Carney, absent. Representative Bell,
Yes.
Representative Bloom,
Yes.
Representative Dudera,
Yes.
Representative Gramlich, absent. Representative Johansson,
Yes.
Representative O'Connor,
Yes.
Representative Toole, absent. Representative Ziegler,
Yes.
9 yes, 4 absent.
Great. Wonderful, everyone. Thanks for that speedy voting. We're going to move on now to 988, which is an act to increase economic development by expanding the special fee application review process of the DEP. And so, Deirdre, I'll have you go ahead and present the bill analysis, and I believe there are some amendments.
Yes, and I go over the amendment a little bit, and I did send that out yesterday to interested parties in the committee. So
Great.
the bill is drafted to increase the number of applications submitted to the department that may be subject to a special fee. The bill requires the department to adopt rules identifying the relevant factors the commissioner must consider in determining if a particular application is subject to a special fees. And the bill also authorizes the department to assign a project category and establish an appropriate fee and timeline for the project based on the complexity of the project. The sponsor's amendment, which is attached to the bill analysis I just sent to everyone, the attached amendment replaces the title and the bill. Under current law, the commissioner is allowed to enter into agreements with entities outside of the department to review applications or portions of applications submitted to the DEP. These entities are called outside reviewers, and the law establishes standards for outside reviewers, qualifications of outside reviewers, and contains a conflict interest provision. This amendment amends the conflict of interest provision by specifying that an outside reviewer is prohibited from reviewing any portion of an application if the outside reviewer was directly or indirectly employed by the applicant on the specified proposal under review. The current law precludes an outside reviewer from reviewing an application if that person was directly or indirectly employed in any capacity at any time during the 12-month period immediately preceding the submission of the application. And it also requires the outside reviewer to sign a written agreement with the commissioner specifying they will not enter into employment directly or indirectly with any applicant whose application was reviewed by the review for a period of 12 months from the completion date of the application review. So the amendment would repeal those provisions and just make it relevant to the project under review. And in the analysis, there's people who testified in the bill, which is very different than the amendment, and no fiscal impact has obviously been received yet.
Thank you, Deirdre. I think that maybe what we could start with is if we could invite Mr. Livesey in from the DEP to give us the DEP's thoughts on the amendment. I think that would be a good place to start. Good morning, Mr. Livesey.
Good morning.
So perhaps you could give us some feedback from the DEP about their thoughts on the amendment.
I'd be happy to. Good morning, Senator Brenner and Representative Tucker, committee members. We've looked at the amendment here, and we certainly appreciate, I think, the intent, and that is to assist the department in our ability to retain outside reviewers. This is something that we presently do primarily just for assistance with visual impact assessments and reviewing, sort of peer reviewing, if you will, work that's submitted by applicants, and also with regard to noise. We've recently amended a contract, and we're soliciting bids, if you will, right now for people to establish pre-qualification to provide certain environmental services to us. We've expanded that to include stormwater for the first time, and that's an area of particular interest to us where we anticipate taking advantage of this outside review capability. So we welcome the intent to provide us with additional flexibility. I anticipate that probably this change would be appealing to members of the consulting community. Whether or not it's a change that is a good one, I think we'll leave in your capable hands. So we're not advocating for this change or advocating against it.
Any thoughts from the committee? Yes, Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see that Senator Kime is in the attendee group, and I wondered if it might be permissible to ask her to come into the meeting so I could ask her a question about how she believes this amendment that she's proposed improves the bill.
Of course.
Thank you.
Good morning, Senator Kime.
Good morning. It's always fun to go through cyberspace like that. Just pop out on the other side.
Senator Kime, if I may, Madam Chair, pose my question. I don't know if you heard my question, but this amendment how do you view this amendment as improving the bill?
Well, so the bill was always meant to increase the department's ability to use outside counsel, right? To use outside resources to get the work done as they see best fit. And so in the original bill, it was suggested that the department come up with the rules around how they would increase the ability, increase the use of special fees. In a follow-up, email with the commissioner, she did say that they are exploring ways to leverage special fees to more regularly use contractors for licensing reviews. And in the letter from the previous commissioner, Gerald Reed, that I attached to my testimony, dated August 11th, one of the suggestions in that was basically what you see here, was that maybe this change would help because it would increase their ability to find people that they can contract with, because there is a smaller pool of people, and then this would open it up because that limits. So current law, as you can see in the amendment, was kind of restricting during the 12-month period immediately preceding the submission of the application. And I think also it's there that they couldn't afterwards for at least 12 months from the date of the review, it's complete. So basically, you're just decreasing the pool of people that are able to do this work, but in current law, and this would just open up the ability to work with people.
May I ask a follow-up? The question is, this doesn't restrict the department or the commissioner's decision-making in any way. In fact, it expands it. Is that right? So that it gives the commissioner a little bit more range to consider where appropriate to have a contractor involved if the department needs to or wants to expedite, and they don't have to wait for a 12-month clock to run out. Am I reading that right?
Yes, right. And if they felt that there was an issue, a conflict of interest issue, obviously, they would choose not to do that.
The discretion is still hers.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Tucker. You're muted, Representative.
At this time, I would like to move ought not to pass on LD 988. And I have a question.
Is there a second to the motion? Representative Ziegler seconds. Yes, with your.
My question is to Mr. Livesay. In practice, who is it who chooses the outside reviewer? And is the outside reviewer working for the DEP, or are they working for the applicant?
We have the choice to veto somebody who would be an outside reviewer. So we have the ability to pick them from a qualified pool. There's an RFP process. So we pick them. We have to be comfortable with them. Obviously, they have to meet minimum qualifications, and they're paid for by the applicant. Was there another part to your question as well? I think there may have been.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
They work for us. That was the other part of it. They do work for us, not the applicant.
Any other discussion? I believe we have a motion on the floor and we're ready for a vote.
Okay, LD 988 ought not to pass. Senator Brunner,
Yes.
Representative Tucker,
Yes.
Senator Bennett,
No.
Representative Hanley, absent. Senator Carney, absent. Representative Bell,
Yes.
Representative Bloom,
Yes.
Representative Dudera,
Yes.
Representative Gramlich, absent. Representative Johansson,
No.
Representative O'Connor,
No.
Representative Toole, absent. Representative Ziegler.
Yes.
Do we have a minority report?
Yes, I would like to propose a minority report of ought to pass as amended with the sponsor's amendment presented today. As long as the other no votes would go along with that.
I would agree with that.
Yes.
Thank you.
So 6 yes, 3 ought to pass as amended, and 4 absent.
Right. Thank you. I'm going to have Senator Keim and Mr. Livesay hang out if that's okay, because we have a few more to work through here. So let's open up a discussion about 1028 next.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thanks, Deirdre.
1028 is an act to ease business expansion by increasing the number and applicability of permit exemptions under the site location of development laws. The bill as drafted does the following. Section 1 increases the exemption from review under the site location of development laws, new construction at licensed manufacturing facilities from 30,000 square feet ground area to 40,000 square feet ground area of development in any calendar year, and the total development cap of 60,000 square ground feet area to 80,000 square feet. Section 2, it increases the exemption from review under the site location of development laws, new construction at or modification of a campus of an educational institution permitted under site law, also from 30,000 square feet to 40,000 square feet of development in any calendar year, and the total development cap of 60,000 square feet to 80,000 square feet of ground area. Section 3 increases the exemption from review under the site location of development laws, new construction at or modification of an existing licensed development that is permitted under site law from 10,000 square feet to 40,000 square feet in any calendar year, and a total development cap is increased from 20,000 square feet to 80,000 square feet. And lastly, the section 4 of the bill specifies that the addition of a dwelling unit does not constitute a division of a parcel of land. Therefore, construction or modification under the thresholds above that results in the construction of a dwelling unit may be exempt from site review under site law. I specify may there because it's not 100% clear to me the intention of that or how that would work in practice, because in theory you could divide a parcel and that itself is division, and if you put a dwelling on it, I'm not sure if that would then say that division of the parcel wouldn't be division of the property. So that piece wasn't clear. However, under the sponsor's amendment, which is also attached to the analysis I sent, it removes section 3 and section 4 of the bill. So it just retains section 1 and section 2 that relate to licensed manufacturing facilities and to the campus of an educational institution permitted under site law. Again, people testified at the hearing on this bill. We have not received a fiscal impact statement yet, and the bill analysis includes the sponsor's amendment, which was also sent yesterday.
Thank you, Deirdre. All right, anyone want to start? Yes, Representative Tucker. Whoops, you're muted, Representative.
I'd like to move on LD 1028 ought to pass as amended by the recent amendment just filed.
Wonderful. Yes, Senator Bennett.
I was just raising my hand to second the motion, but Representative O'Connor was very quick on it, so I missed out.
Any comments, questions, thoughts?
I would
Right.
just, may I just say one thing since you recognize me? I really appreciate, frankly, the energy with which Senator Kime has pursued these bills, and she did it, I think, from my understanding, because of her work through the governor's economic redevelopment or resuscitation committee, whatever it was called. And I just think it's great to see some work product come out of that. So thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks.
I'll just amend your comment to say recovery, not resuscitation. All right. Any other comments? I think we're ready for a vote.
Okay. LD 1028 ought to pass as amended. Senator Brenner,
Yes.
Representative Tucker,
Yes.
Senator Bennett,
Yes.
Representative Hanley, absent. Senator Carney, absent. Representative Bell,
Yes.
Representative Bloom,
Yes.
Representative Dudera,
Yes.
Representative Gramlich, absent. Representative Johansson,
Yes.
Representative O'Connor,
Yes.
Representative Toole, absent. Representative Ziegler,
Yes.
nine yes, 4 absent.
Great. Wonderful, everyone. So next up, we'll open up a work session for LD 1038, and I'll pass it over to Deirdre.
So LD 38 is an act to facilitate a timely revision process in the site location of development laws. The bill as drafted provides that the processing period for each type of permit or license application submitted to the department may not exceed 90 days. It applies to the processing period to both new and revised applications. It also specifies that the processing period for a revised application begins on the date the commissioner receives the revised application. The sponsor's amendment, which is attached to the bill analysis, replaces the bill. Instead of specifying the processing period established by the commissioner for every license or permit issued by the department, whether new or revised, cannot exceed 90 days, it directs the commissioner to establish a processing period for amended permit applications for a permit issued pursuant to the site location of development laws, and specifies that that processing period for amended permit applications begins on the date the commissioner notifies the applicant the application is complete. So it retains the discretion of the commission to set the processing timeframe for both new and only for amended permits under site law. There is no fiscal impact statement received at this time. And again, the analysis, it contains a list of those that testified on the hearing on the bill as drafted.
Thank you, Deirdre. Mr. Livesay, could you give us some feedback about how the department is feeling about this amendment?
I'd be happy to. So as an initial matter, this is a topic that came up for discussion, I think, sometime this summer, and that is that there's concern that permit amendments weren't being processed as fast as individuals would like. And that part of the reason for that may be that, unlike new permit applications, there is not a processing deadline, if you will, set by the commissioner. And so that concern that was raised has made us look a little bit more closely at both how we're processing new applications and amendment applications. And certainly there are some amendment applications that haven't made it to the top of the stack as quickly as people would like. And that may in fact be in part because of the permitting deadlines that we have in place for new applications. And so we've tried to tackle that internally with helping folks prioritize based if they were focusing too much on permit deadlines, looking more at when things come in the door. So we're sort of taking some steps, I think, to try to solve this problem. And we've also looked at, how quickly we're processing applications for new permits versus amendments. And we do turn around the amendment applications more quickly than new permits, but they still can take longer than some applicants want. When we look at the amended text here, we're not supporting it and we're not opposing it in this case either. And I think the reason being is that if the commissioner has the discretion to set the permitting deadlines, and we have to do so for amendment applications, then the commissioner would have that opportunity to look at the deadline for new applications and amendment applications and sort of set them accordingly to be fair to applicants and reasonable for the department in terms of setting expectations. And so I think our comment would be that in sort of implementing this, it's possible that in establishing new permitting deadlines, existing ones could, depending on the circumstances, be increased. So there's there's a trade-off here. For processing some permit types quicker, there may be others that go slower, but the commission under this bill would have that flexibility, which has been exercised recently. So that's sort of how we would operate within the system, I think, that's being proposed.
So it sounds like the ability to accomplish a tightened timeline or a stated timeline would be relative to the staffing capacity of the department.
I think that's true. I mean, there are two big drivers. Is obviously volume. Permit volume is a key factor in terms of how quickly permit applications get turned around. So that's been reflected in our current permit processing schedule for the last couple of cycles because of the large influx of solar projects. So we currently have built into the existing schedule and the one that was adopted the year prior certain triggers. So if we have more than X number of site law applications for solar projects or Natural Resource Protection Act permit application for solar projects, that actually increases the permitting timeline for all permit types, whether they're solar or not, that come in after those thresholds are reached. And so that basically reflects the fact that when volume goes up, all other things being equal, it's probably going to take more time to process permits. So that's sort of that same concept, I think, is something that would carry through if we're establishing new deadlines for new categories of permits.
And Mr. Lipsey, as an employer myself, I manage a crew on my farm. I would imagine that a blanket message to your staff that they need to move faster and do more might have an effect on morale. Could you speak to that?
It does. I think that a lot of the career staff try to tune politics out best they can, going from one administration to the next. But I know that the bills that we're talking about now have captured their attention or caught their attention, and they're paying attention. And I think the difference between some of the other policy decisions that are made and what's being discussed here is that staff view some of these bills almost as though it's a referendum on their job performance. And it can be a real morale killer, or it's tough when they hear or interpret legislation as suggesting that they're not working hard enough or fast enough. And that's, I don't know that that's the intent of these pieces of bills, but that's how many of them are sort of receiving it. So that's something that we're trying to work through and let them know what's going on and that we appreciate the work that they're doing.
Yeah, I can't imagine that's the intent.
I don't think so. It's we all when we hear things, they go through sort of our own personal filters, and I think that that's a sense that some of the staff have.
Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that we should hear from the bill sponsor as to her intent and maybe the folks that are paying close attention to it within the DEP can hear directly about intent. But I'd also like to hear from the bill sponsor about, since this is a new amendment, how she thinks it improves the bill, and also about the people, the customers being served by DEP in this particular case, and how big an impact it might have on them, and what her intent is with respect to that.
Senator Kime?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Bennett, for including me in the conversation. Yeah, I think when you take the whole package of bills that I put in together, there was a recognition that you can't keep asking the same people to do more in the same amount of time. And so there was a balance of bills presented to the committee that respected that fact and tried to find creative ways to allow the department to reduce their workload while respecting environmental regulations. There was no intention to reduce environmental regulations, nor was there an intent to make staff feel like they're not working to some peak level of performance. However, I do think that this bill reflects what was again and again a concern that was shared by the regulated community. And they need to be able to have a voice that speaks to the DEP that maybe is neutral, because these are relationships that happen every day as they have to come to the DEP and seek regulations and seek their permitting, and they need to have good relationships while they do that. But in that, we shouldn't have a government that our people are afraid to speak to and say, hey, there needs to be improvements here, this doesn't work. And so the amendment that I put forward here is still giving the option to the department to set up their timelines. But what it does do is it gives surety. So then the business community is looking at, hey, I can expect this is going to take this long, because the department then can say, well, here's all the permits we have coming in front of us. This looks like the time frame we can get back to folks in. And so then they have something to plan on. Just as the department has ways of asking for increased time, if things, if they run into a snag, they can always go back to whatever or business or person they're dealing with and say, hey, we need more time. And the person says, yes, they work through it. The department has that ability now. And so this really mirrors the current process that they have in any way, only it's saying, okay, the biggest issue we heard was amendments around site law are very problematic. So I don't want to ignore that. And I think that this is a gentle way of saying, hey, let's move this a little bit. Let's give a little more surety to the people who are on the other side of those permits, who are trying to plan out every step of the way. They've got their investments involved. So I think this is a small step, but probably a helpful step to the community. And when we're done with this bill, I would like one moment of the committee's time to talk about one other thing that I would just encourage for the DEP, if I may.
Any additional questions, thoughts?
Just to follow up on that?
Yes.
Thank you. So just to be clear, that your amendment doesn't actually direct staff to do anything. It directs the leadership, the management of the department to actually just organize time in a way that's publicly available or gives more information to the applicants. Is that right?
Yes, thank you for the clarifying question. That's correct.
Okay. Madam Chair, is there a motion on the floor, and would it be appropriate to make one now?
There is no motion on the floor.
May I make one?
You may.
Thank you. I'd like to move ought to pass as amended with the sponsor's amendment.
And is there a second? Representative O'Connor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would second that motion.
Representative O'Connor is a second. Any further discussion?
Yes, I would just, may I?
Yes, please.
I just wanted to confirm from Nick Livesey that you're okay. You're not one way or the other on this. You you didn't express an opinion one way or the other. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Additional comments? I believe we're ready for a vote.
I see Representative O'Connor's hand up.
Oh, sorry. It's hard to see your hand, Representative O'Connor. It gets buried in the wall behind you. Sorry. It's okay. You could just go like this if you need me. There we go. All right, ready for a vote. The question on the floor is ought to pass as amended.
Okay. Senator Brenner,
Yes.
Representative Tucker,
No.
Senator Bennett,
Yes.
Representative Hanley,
Yes.
Senator Carney, absent. Representative Bell,
No.
Representative Bloom,
No.
Representative Dudera,
No.
Representative Gramlich, absent. Representative Johansson,
Yes.
Representative O'Connor,
Yes.
Representative Toole, absent. Representative Ziegler,
No.
what is the minority for the noes?
I think Senator Bennett has the minority report. No?
Can you read out the vote, please, Sabrina?
Yep, there's 5 ought to pass as amended with 5 noes, undetermined minority, and then 3 absent.
You're muted, Representative Tucker.
My minority report would be ought not to pass.
Yes, Senator Bennett.
I would like to ask the committee's forbearance and allow Senator Kime to make her statement, if that's permissible.
Yes, please.
Thank you so much. One other thing that came up as part of our discussions around the DEP that I just wanted to put a plug in for. When I was serving on the Economic Recovery Committee, the other issue that came up and was talked about was the DEP's online licensing system. And I don't know if there's been much talk in your committee about that, but as the Oversight Committee and speaking from my experience on the Economic Recovery Committee, I just wanted to let you all know how important that is. It has a large price tag. It's $8 million. But right now there's a lot of silos within the DEP and people are having to fill out numerous pieces of paper that get sent off to the different department places within the department. And so there's redundancy for the business community, but then there's not great communication either between the departments and then between the community. So this, if this portal was up and running, businesses and employees in the department would be able to go log in, see where their licenses are in the process, see where they got submitted, where they're being held up. And it just gives a level of transparency that would help both the department and the regulated community. And I really think probably save man hours as well at the DEP. Obviously, it would have to. So I just wanted to put a plug in for that. It's $8 million. The commissioner said they're looking at how they can create bite-sized pieces to implement that. But if there's a way for this committee to stand with the DEP, and I don't know if it's writing a letter, but in some way encouraging that we begin that process and start funding that, I think it's really important moving forward. And we don't like to spend money generally, at least on my side of the aisle. But I think sometimes we have to because it's for great benefit, and it's time to move into the next century and go away from so much paper. So thank you for letting me just have that moment to share with you how important we found that on the Economic Recovery Committee, that was also another really important piece of the puzzle that I think will improve things at the DEP and for the businesses in Maine.
Thank you so much, Senator Kime, for bringing that to our attention. All right, thank you both for joining us. Mr. Lipsey, I might have you hang out for another second in case there are questions on the next bill. Next up, we have 1161, an act concerning marina-based restaurants in shoreland zones.
So this bill amends the definition of functionally water-dependent uses under the shoreland zoning laws by adding marina-based restaurants as one of the uses. The bill defines marina-based restaurant as a restaurant establishment located on a marina premises that is an accessory to the primary use of the premises as a marina. So application of the existing law and rules, I thought I would give a little background to sort of understand how this would work. So under the Chapter 1000 guidelines for municipal shoreland zoning ordinances, functionally water-dependent uses are excluded from the following: setback requirements for expansion of non-conforming structures and setback requirements for new principal and accessory structures. The rules define an accessory structure or use as a use or structure which is incidental and subordinate to the principal use of or structure. Accessory uses, when aggregated, shall not subordinate the principal use of the lot. A deck or similar extension of the principal structure or a garage attached to the principal structure by a roof or a common wall is considered part of the principal structure. For reference, a principal use is defined as a use other than one which is wholly incidental or accessory to another use on the same lot. The Chapter 1000 rules also specify that all uses must comply with the setback, minimum lot size, and shore frontage requirements and establish minimum lot standards for principal structures. So if a marina-based restaurant is defined as an accessory use, the restaurant would be exempt from meeting the minimum lot size and shore frontage requirements in addition to the setback requirements. At the public hearing, people testified. There's a list on the bill analysis. I will note that in DEP's testimony, while they were in opposition to the bill, they suggested that if the committee was moving forward with allowing marina-based restaurants to be built without meeting setback, minimum lot size, and shore frontage requirements, the committee may want to consider doing so by creating a restaurant-specific section instead of changing the definition of functionally water-dependent. So provided within the bill analysis, I won't go through them at length just for your reference, are examples in existing statutory provisions that allow municipalities to adopt ordinances that permit certain structure uses to be constructed even if they cannot meet the resource setback requirements. So there's a provision within the Shoreland Zoning Act that allows for exemptions from setbacks for decks over rivers within a downtown revitalization project. And there's an exemption that allows walkways and trails over rivers within a downtown revitalization project. And there was another provision I didn't include because that was more of a height provision, but there's an exception for cupolas within the shoreline zoning exceeding the height requirements in that area. Additionally, at the public hearing, there were several information requests from the committee. One was on the economic impacts of restaurants. So Stacy Key from the Maine Marine Trades Association provided that the AMI Marina calculator specifies that for every $1 spent in a marina restaurant in Maine, there is $3.68 return in regional economic impacts. And I'll note here that her full document she provided is attached to the bill analysis as well. There was also a question regarding how many marina-based restaurants currently exist and how many additional restaurants could be built if this was passed. So according again to information provided by Stacy Keefe, and these are approximations, as of 2019, there were 104 establishments categorized as marinas in Maine. However, it's not clear that this number includes municipal docks and boat builders who also have marina facilities. Additionally, there are approximately 18 restaurants. There's 14 coastal and 4 inland located where the primary business is a marina. It's unclear again in some cases if a marina and a restaurant are technically part of the same property or if they're separate on a tax map. So this could mean that there are approximately 10 to 20 more locations that include a restaurant and dockage, but a marina may not be the primary business. I know there was some uncertainty at the hearing of exactly, if we wanted to get every restaurant that may be considered non-conforming under shoreline zoning. I wasn't able to get data at that granular level, but this gives you a little bit of a picture of approximately 408 marinas and about 18 restaurants. So I think it gives a little bit of a picture. Other than that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Representative Dudera.
Thank you very much. And thank you so much, Deirdre, for that analysis. I would like to say ought not to pass, and I'd like to just speak to my motion, if I may.
Is there a second? Representative Tucker is a second. Great. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I do think that we have to allow businesses to change with the times. And I feel like our marinas, have been one business, specifically along the coast, where they've been geared toward our more traditional industries, such as fishing. And, we have to change with the times. People are coming up here, understandably, because our coast is so beautiful, with their boats. And I do think that, being able to access a marina for food, for a restaurant, for a drink, for a hot dog, it's a way for these businesses to diversify and continue to make money. And I imagine on a lake, it's no different if they can offer their patrons who are, picking up gas or renting a boat. So I'm generally in favor of that, in favor of small businesses being able to do things. But I do believe I agree with Director Livesay after I reread his testimony that I don't think that this particular statute is the place to include marina-based restaurants. I think if we want to look at doing this type of thing, it ought to be a bill that specifically gets into more of the restaurant workings, and that's where it belongs. So that's why I'm going to say ought not to pass. Thanks.
Any other comments? Yes, Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Representative Dudera about that this doesn't seem to be the right fit for the change that was proposed, and often people, it takes a public hearing, a work session before we get to the point where we really know what the most appropriate part of a law, if we're going to change it at all, where the change should be and how it should be. And I also think that I'd be very cautious about the approach that we would use on allowing more marina-based restaurants than we have now, because our lakes and our waters are precious, and we certainly don't want to jeopardize them any further. But I kind of draw the different conclusion from Representative Dudera, which is that I think that I'd really like the chance to think about this bill a little bit longer, and to understand the breadth of law, and also where we might, as per Deirdre's information, how that might be constructed to even try to write something that would fit more in the construct of the example she gave, rather than just this blanket sort of inclusion as the bill came out. So I would really value that, and would ask the committee their indulgence in tabling this so that I could look into that a little bit more.
Is that a motion to table?
I can't debate a motion to table, so I think it would be inappropriate without intervening comment.
I would second that motion.
Okay. Representative O'Connor?
I was just going to make a motion to table.
All right. Do we want to have a show of hands? right. Okay. So we are going to table 1161 and offer
Thank
Senator
you.
Bennett some opportunity to consider.
I'm grateful. Thank you.
Mhm. You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Thank the committee for that.
All right, and with that, we'll close the work session on 1161. And I believe, Deirdre, that ends our time with you this morning. Thank you for that. And
Thank you.
now we'll have the Dan Tartikoff Show. Good morning, Dan. Welcome.
Hi.
Okay, so let's take them in order since we have Representative Hanley with us, and we'll take up LD 226 first.
So I'm just very quickly sending out a couple documents. We've already had a work session on this. I've already gone through an analysis, although I reattached that analysis. I also attached a copy of the proposed amendment from Representative Tucker that was distributed prior to the public hearing. And there's also some additional comments since the last work session from the Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Institute regarding the federal AIM Act, which you also received, I believe, earlier this week. I don't have any other comments, and I understand there's been some more discussions.
Okay, so yes, Representative Tucker. You're on mute.
Currently, there is a motion to pass 226 as amended pending. We have given a lot of consideration to suggested amendments. This is a bill that involves a lot of interested parties, some of which are in conflict, and the bill contains within itself compromises which industry has made. The bill is simply to bring us in line with the other climate alliance states who are trying to reduce hydrofluorocarbons in the atmosphere, which are very potent gases of a greenhouse gas variety. The issue of leakage has been brought up and discussed in detail, but it probably would not be appropriate to be part of this particular bill, because we're trying to move in unison with the other states, with the encouragement of the new federal legislation, which is moving in the same direction, which was signed last October, and with the international community, which is also moving in the same direction. So it's not like we're setting up a special program for Maine. We're simply joining the other states, the federal government, and the international community to move towards the elimination of hydrofluorocarbons. And it's on that basis that we probably can't turn this into a sprawling bill that does a lot of other things as well. Therefore, I'd like to keep it a clean vote on the amended version of the bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative. Are there any comments? We have a motion on the floor. Ought to pass as amended. All right. Ready for a vote? Yes, Representative Tucker. You're on mute.
I understand that there may be some discussion of our committee encouraging the Efficiency Maine to look into a program on leakage, but I'm not familiar with exactly how comprehensive that program would be. I would leave that to others to discuss if they wish.
Representative Hanley, did you want to fill us in on where you are with that project?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, after this vote, I was going to bring up the issue of a letter to the trust. I think you received my communication about asking them to look into the possibility of a fee on refrigerants and how best to put that fee to work to upgrade the existing systems that leak in the state of Maine. And that's also the foundation of my opposition to the pending motion, is that we're trading one leaking gas for another leaking gas. And I know that, as Representative Tucker mentioned, it would make it a sprawling bill, but sometimes ideas have to get bigger to get better. So anyway, that I was going to hold off till after the vote and speak about the letter.
Thank you. Representative Johansson.
Thank you, Senator. I am going to vote to support this today, not because I'm happy with it or like it. I just think it's the best I can get and the best we can do. So I will be voting to support this today.
Any additional comments? All right, I believe we are ready for a vote. The question on the floor is ought to pass as amended for LD 226.
Okay. Senator Brenner,
Yes.
Representative Tucker,
Yes.
Senator Bennett,
Yes.
Representative Hanley,
No.
Senator Carney, absent. Representative Bell,
Yes.
Representative Bloom,
Yes.
Representative Dudera,
Yes.
Representative Gramlich, absent. Representative Johansson,
Yes.
Representative O'Connor,
No.
Representative Toole, absent. Representative Ziegler.
Yes.
So that's 8 yes, 2 noes, and 3 absent. Do the noes have a minority report?
Yes, it simply ought not to pass.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, thank you, everyone. And next up, we'll have a work session for LD 802 on solar decommissioning.
So this has also had a work session already. This is the second work session. Subsequent to that first work session, DEP worked out an amendment, I believe, after discussion with stakeholders. And that was sent to you a while back, and I've resent it again along with the analysis from the prior work session. The DEP is probably better positioned to speak to the amendment.
Okay, so perhaps we can bring Mr. Livesay back in to give us a few words about the amendment. Mr. Livesay, my apologies for having you travel so many times through the wormhole today, but we're glad you're back.
That's all right.
Can
Glad
you
to be back.
speak to the
Thank you
amendment?
very much. I'll run through the amendment, and maybe what I'll do is I'll speak to both what's in the amendment and what's not in the amendment, and the way to organize that, at least as I've sort of mapped it out in my own mind, is to group together the comments that were made on the draft bill from Nature Conservancy, the renewable energy folks, the Association for General Contractors, and then some of the comments that we heard from committee members.
Great.
So I grouped them into 4 categories. The first one relates to the level of site restoration. And there were some comments that we received that in restoring a site, it might not be feasible or reasonable or even necessary for solar components to be removed below bedrock. We agree with that, and so that change is reflected in the amendment language that you have. There was a question with regard to how a site should be regraded, and it's not. We don't believe it's sensible to try to restore the site to pre-development grade. It's really buttoning the site up and making sure things are revegetated moving forward, so that we don't have any environmental problems. So that's reflected in the amendment language as well. And there are questions about if somebody post decommissioning wants to retain some of the development features from the solar project, can that happen? I think that the bill as originally drafted would allow that through how their decommissioning plan was structured, but in the amendment language before you, some added clarity is provided there, so that if a farmer, for example, wants to retain an access road that was put in, they have that ability to do that. They just need to account for it in their plan. So those are all the things that I grouped into the level of site restoration, and I think that in general, it'd be fair to characterize the changes as incorporating basically everybody's comments on those points. I think that they were good ones. The next category relates to financial assurance, and there are sort of 2 pieces to this. One relates to timing. And comments received suggested that it may not be necessary to update the financial assurance every 5 years, at least in the near term, because the expectation is that these projects will be around for 20 or 30 years. I think that those are good comments as well. The time that financial assurance from our perspective is most important is, one, right out of the gate, so before construction. And that's because if something goes wrong with a developer financially while things are under construction, you really don't want to be left with a partly built project and hoping that some new owner or developer will come along and sort of pick up where that person left off. So as amended, a solar developer would have to have financial assurance and demonstrate that prior to construction. And then they would have to update it, but not until 15 years later. And then after you get to that point, it would be updated every 5 years. And that's just the every 5 years is to account for changes in decommissioning costs, basically. That's to make sure that the financial assurance is the appropriate size in the hopefully unlikely event it would need to be drawn upon. Also in the financial assurance basket, we received several comments about the possibility of having the municipality and the state be sort of co-payee on a bond, for example, or to set up the law to sort of preempt possibly local home rule authority. We did not incorporate those suggestions into the revisions that you see before you. And with regard to home rule authority, we certainly aren't interested in removing that or requesting or proposing that the towns not have home rule authority if they want to tackle decommissioning in some different way. We don't want to set up a situation where there are 2 sort of different requirements, where a town might ask for one thing and DEP for another. And we have some experience with that to date under site law projects, where a town may have required something that goes beyond what we would require. And we've simply adopted the approach of saying, that's fine with us. We're not going to require anything different. And that same approach is provided for here. So we don't see the existing language as setting up sort of 2 parallel and therefore sort of burdensome tracks. We think that if you can satisfy the town with something more stringent, then that's fine. We're not going to ask for a separate bond. There's a new section of the bill. It's on page 2 of the document that we put together. This falls under the 3rd category of things. It's administration. I think that Mr. Tartikoff mentioned at the last work session that the amendment here is entitled 35A, which is not where the bulk of DEP sort of statutes are, which is Title 38. The same goes for the LUPC. Their statutes are primarily in Title 12, wind power, and is sort of an exception. They're also where some of our statutes are in 35A. And so the new language that deals with administration basically ensures that the LUPC and DEP have no more or no less administrative type authority. So that pertains to rulemaking and enforcement, for example. And then finally, the fourth category relates to jurisdiction and the threshold. The current and originally proposed bill, the decommissioning requirement would kick in for projects over 3 acres. And we looked at are there alternatives? And one of the goals that we talked about was not sweeping in the solar project on a farm that's intended to serve that farm, for example. I think one I might have used in testimony related to a similar solar project intended to benefit a brewery. And so we reached out to the PUC to see if there's a different way of thinking about this or different or better threshold. And based on sort of terminology that they use, we didn't come up with anything. And we also looked at the data that we have from the projects we've reviewed so far and looked at their size. And so mind you, we don't review really small projects. They wouldn't trigger DEP permitting. But of the 150 plus projects we looked at in 2020, there were only 4 smaller than 5 acres and only 2 smaller than 3 acres. And 3 of those 4 and all of the ones under 3 acres were municipal landfills and the municipal projects. And then in 2021, we've looked at another 75 projects, and there is, I guess, 1 under 5 acres and 0 under 3. And so our kind of takeaway was that the 3 acre threshold captures just about everything. So we haven't recommended adjustment of that. And so those are the four categories, if you will.
Great.
Level of site restoration, financial insurance, administration, and then the jurisdictional threshold.
Thank you for that. That was quite helpful. And I think it really, it kind of dug into a lot of our questions. And I feel like the amendments that you've put forth really capture what the committee's looking for. So thank you for that. I also appreciate the evaluation, especially of the acreage. I think that's really helpful and helps to illustrate that 3 acres might be a good fit for this piece of legislation as a marker. Representative Tucker.
I move on to pass on LD 802 as amended in the written document that we've received from the department.
Second.
Excellent. So that's a motion ought to pass as amended with a second by Representative Bloom. Representative Hanley.
Yes, I was going to second this, and
we'll take your
also
third.
going to mention that that my concerns have been answered with the acreage issue, and that's something that always can be addressed later on anyway.
Yeah, I don't expect this is the last time we'll see this. Additional comments? All right, we have a motion on the floor. I believe we're ready for a vote.
Okay, ought to pass as amended, LD 802. Senator Brenner,
Yes.
Representative Tucker,
Yes.
Senator Bennett,
Yes.
Representative Hanley,
Yes.
Senator Carney, absent. Representative Bell,
Yes.
Representative Bloom,
Yes.
Representative Dudera, absent. Representative Gramlich, absent. Representative Johansson,
Yes.
Representative O'Connor,
Yes.
Representative Toole, absent. Representative Ziegler.
Yes.
9 yes, 4 absent.
Yes, Dan.
Can I just have permission to run some language by DEP? There, we had Nick and I had a discussion about the enforcement language, and I might want to tweak it a little bit, but I didn't want to bog the committee down in that process. If I could just run the language by them before we bring it back for language review, that'd be great.
Of course. All right, I believe we are ready to move on to our next work session for LD 872 about motor vehicle emission control systems tampering. Dan, I'll pass it over to you.
So this was another one that we've already had a work session on. There was a prior amendment from the DEP that was discussed at the last work session. I believe you can disregard that for now. There's a new amendment that has been sent to you. And I've also sent a copy of the bill analysis from the last work session. Unlike the prior amendment, this amendment is an amendment to the original bill. Although there are some changes, I think, that you'll notice from the prior version. I've also noted here that although it's not included in the amendment, there was some last minute back and forth the other day wherein DEP and some of the stakeholders have agreed to clarify that the phrase salvage pool as used in the amendment is meant to refer to an insurance salvage pool, which is defined in Title 29A. So if the committee wants to move forward with the amendment, we would plan on using that term and cross-referencing it as provided in that title.
All right. Does anyone have any comments about the proposed amendments or the bill?
Yes, I do.
Wonderful. I'd love to hear them.
I ran over that amendment last night and emailed the sender of it this morning because I object to the language of individual and asked that that be changed to employer or employee. However, I haven't received any answer back and I see no change to the amendment, so I won't be able to support it in its present state.
Representative Hanley, can you just tell me where it is you're talking about that language so I can look at it on my copy here?
Yeah, give me one moment so
Okay.
I go back to my.
I just want to make sure I know what you're talking about. Oh, is it D, person means an individual? Under definitions?
I have to unmute myself. I can't. Once I go to the page, I can't unmute myself. So it's the definition of person. And it's, I'm trying to re-find it here. It's the definition of a person.
Based on our conversation? Yeah, I don't think so. If you guys want to come and listen to what you have to say.
If maybe I can help here just for clarity.
It's line D, person
Okay.
means individual or corporation.
And you would like it, and what is it that you're looking?
I want to remove the word individual because when I talked to when we were doing the work session, it was clear that that would capture even a backyard mechanic or a high school kid working on his car. And I didn't want to have that. And they'd be subject to the same penalties as a used car dealer, even if they tried to transfer it to their friend or something. So I wanted to change the word individual to employee or employer. and remove the word individual.
Okay. So I respect your wishes and I hear where you're coming from in terms of your interest in protecting the individual, although I respectfully disagree because from my perspective, I think the goal here is to discourage any tampering regardless of how we define person. And to me, I feel like individual needs to be included there. Representative Tucker?
I also agree, however, agree that individuals should stay in the bill. However, I would like to hear the reaction of the department. And if Mr. Crawford is here, let me just see, is he here?
He is. We can bring him on over.
I'd like to hear what Mr. Crawford has to say about that.
Here we go. Good morning, members of the committee. Jeff Crawford, Bureau of Air Quality Director. Yeah, we have some concerns with the proposed revision to the definition of person, primarily because what this would do is allow me a little bit of vernacular, the shade tree mechanic, if you will, to perform this tampering and still get paid for the work. Unfortunately, there's a group of people out there that wouldn't be covered, under the definition of a corporation, firm, partnership, sole proprietorship, and so on. So they wouldn't have a legal entity, but they still might be performing this work and getting paid for it. The department's original proposal would have restricted these prohibitions to people doing the work for compensation. And if the committee found that there were merits in excluding certain individuals from doing this work, I would suggest that the original language, as in 2A for compensation as struck out, would be preferable. We would prefer to see this prohibition against all people.
Representative Tucker?
Although our discussion should continue, I would like to make a motion that LD 872 ought to pass as amended by the red and black amendment that we received and reviewed earlier.
Is there a second? Representative Ziegler is a second. So we have a motion on the floor, ought to pass as amended, and a second from Representative Ziegler. Representative Hanley.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. My other concerns also is that we're making legislation on top of legislation. Federal law already forbids tampering with emission systems, and the state inspection requirement is that those systems have to be in place. So that's another concern of mine, is that we're just stacking laws on top of existing laws. It's an unnecessary activity.
Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm a little confused because I thought the point was to, as Mr. Crawford just said, was to disallow people from tampering. But it looks to me, unless I'm missing something, and I'd like him to explain it if he could, that there are specific carve-outs from that this amendment would do for certain types of operators in the bill. So why would we be carving out anybody?
Mr. Crawford?
Yeah, we worked with the stakeholders. As you recall, I believe Coparts, which is a vehicle auction or insurance salvage company, and along with Maine Auto Dealers to craft the latest revision. One of the more notable revisions would be to carve out a vehicle auction in the insurance salvage pool. I believe during the public hearing, there was testimony from the stakeholders that looking at vehicle auctions, people purchasing vehicles from these could in fact be subject to enforcement from the department on this. And same thing with the insurance salvage pools. These people were essentially acting as middlemen. They were never actually taking title to the vehicles. They were taking a wrecked or salvaged vehicle and selling parts, oftentimes out of state. So they had really no way of knowing whether or not a vehicle had been tampered with. They were not selling it for retail. They were selling it for wholesale purposes. And then finally, we heard from the main auto dealers that, franchise dealers aren't really the problem. And I think it's also important to note that the department already has the ability to inspect and enforce these dealers through our Chapter 127 low emission vehicle program rules. So I think that explains that carve out, if you will.
If I may just follow up with not as a question, but just a statement. I mean, I'm not ready to support this. Unfortunately, I was kind of favorably inclined to doing something here, but it bothers me a lot when, well, sure, the auto dealers and I represent a number of auto dealers, and they're all fine people. And they were a stakeholder group, and they got to sit there and make sure their interests were protected. And yet we're always more suspicious of the people who aren't in the room. And it's just, to me, the process for arriving at this amendment, I think is a little suboptimal. And I don't know if it's worth working at this bill or not, but in its current form, I can't support it.
Senator Bennett, can I ask you a clarifying question?
Sure.
Is your opposition to the carve out for the auction, salvage pool, and dealer?
It might be. I mean, it just strikes me as odd that we think that we're concerned about some high school kid, and we want to make sure we let them know, if they ever read this law, that they're not they're subject to this, but we're doing a big carve out for people who make lots of money in cars. That's the part that seems to bother me. I don't know if that answered your question. Apologies if it didn't.
I'm just wondering if you are, is your intent to offer a friendly amendment?
Well, I kind of liked where Representative Hanley was going, and if Mr. Crawford thinks that with all due respect to Representative Hanley, and instead of changing the definition of person in the bill, rather just to do what Mr. Crawford said, which is to include the words for compensation under T2A, I'd feel more comfortable with that.
Representative Tucker.
My reasons for supporting the what we're calling the carve-outs is not based on simply access or sophistication, but based on the validity of their arguments. Because I believe used car dealers ordinarily have a car that already meets the federal specifications. And the problem that we're focusing on here are used cars that are below the radar on the federal enforcement for new cars. So I don't think it's just because of access or lobbying or behind the scenes special treatment at all. It's based on the validity of their concerns. Thank you.
I have a question for you, Mr. Crawford, or perhaps for you, Dan, or Mr. Tartikoff. When we talk about franchise dealerships, used car dealers that are part of a franchise, how are they considered? when you have a branch of your franchise that's used cars?
I would have to defer to Dan or perhaps an expert from the auto dealership world on that one.
Yeah, I'm also unsure. I believe that the definition of the franchise dealer is written with respect to new car sales only. Bruce Garrity is here in the attendee space and represents, I think, most of the stakeholders that were involved. So I imagine he can answer that question.
Okay, let's bring Mr. Garrity over for this one question. Mr. Garrity, we have one question for you this morning.
I heard it, Senator. Let me, and if I can, let me respond. New car dealers obviously do sell used cars. They have to sell them with inspection stickers in place, which are regulated by the Secretary of State's office. In addition, their new car franchises are based on them following laws. If they violate a statute such as this, that puts their new car franchise at risk. The other point I would make is that the used cars that are sold at dealerships, at new car dealerships, quite frankly, really don't run into these kinds of problems. If anything, new car dealers, and this is going to another bill, LD 796, that's in front of another committee, are being victimized by emission systems and catalytic converter theft. So they're very careful about those. So I think they're very different from the kinds of folks in dealerships that Mr. Crawford has been focused on as the concern.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Are there any other thoughts, questions, comments? Yes, Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know how this motion is going to go, but I am going to support a report, an ought to pass report that has the amendment as offered by Representative Tucker, with the words, I got to pull it up here. No. With those stricken words back in regarding compensation. I just wanted the committee to know that. That's where I was going.
Can you just say that one more time?
I'm not sure I can, but I'll try. So I support the amended version, but I would put the stricken words, and I don't have it in front of me. I can't find it for some reason right now. Oh, here it is. In 2A, where it says for compensation being stricken out in red in the recently delivered amendment, I would leave for compensation in. So it would read, a person may not tamper with the emission control system of a motor vehicle for compensation, except, et cetera.
Representative Tucker. You're on mute, Representative.
If Mr. Crawford could please address the issue of taking his amendment, which is now in front of the committee, the black and the red changes, and what would be the effect of taking out the line that crosses out for compensation and leaving that part of the bill? What would the implications of that be?
Yeah, removing the strike through for compensation would limit our enforcement to individuals performing this, getting paid for doing the work. So it would arguably address Representative Hanley's concerns about the high school kid down the street. It would also address our concerns for those individuals that are doing this work, getting paid for it, but aren't a real dealership, aren't a legal entity per se.
Would the bill still accomplish a purpose of cracking down on evasion of emission controls?
Yes.
Okay, I would agree with Senator Bennett's proposal and amend my motion to put for compensation back into the bill. If Dan can understand that.
I'll second that if necessary.
All right, we have a friendly amendment accepted and seconded. And Representative Hanley.
Yes, thank you. I like that language, and now I will agree with this.
What a fun morning we're having. All right, so I think unless there's further comment, we're ready for a vote. The question on the floor is ought to pass as amended with a friendly amendment.
Okay. Senator Brenner.
Yes.
Representative Tucker.
Yes.
Senator Bennett.
Yes.
Representative Hanley.
Yes.
Senator Carney. Absent. Representative Bell.
Yes.
Representative Bloom.
Yes.
Representative Dudera. Absent. Representative Gramlich. Absent. Representative Johansson.
Yes.
Representative O'Connor.
Yes.
Representative Toole. Absent. Representative Ziegler.
Yes.
Should be 9 yes, 4 absent.
Mr. Crawford, thank you for joining us for that lively discussion and vote. I think we'll
Thank you.
back over to the attendee space. Appreciate your help. Can you, I'm sorry, Sabrina, that was a unanimous of those present, correct? Okay, thank you. Okay, now on to Lakes, LD 909.
So this is the first work session that we are having on this bill, and I have just sent out a number of documents. Unless there was conversation you wanted to have before, I can go through the analysis.
Sorry, I got lost in my screens. I couldn't find my cursor. Representative Tucker.
I would like to hear the analysis, although the sponsor has requested that we don't vote today because he wants the chance to circulate an idea with all the interested parties on the lake. And so if we could not vote, however, it would be nice for all of us to learn a little bit about the issue so that we can have our thinking caps on between now and the next session.
Love that idea.
So I guess I'll go through the analysis then. You'll have to bear with me because there's a lot of information, which is not atypical of dealing with private and special laws. So under current law, the Lucerne and Maine Village Corporation, which I'll just call the corporation in the town of Dedham, is required to construct, operate, and maintain a dam at the north end of Phillips Lake at no higher than 227 feet above sea level. The bill removes the height restriction and instead requires the dam to be constructed, operated, and maintained at a height adopted by the corporation at an annual meeting. So here's a note that I don't make very often. Following discussion with the Office of the Revisor of Statutes and review of the private and special laws affecting Phillips Lake and the corporation, it was determined that the law proposed for amendment in the bill is not the most recent version of the law. The current law, which is Private and Special Law 2005, Chapter 17, was actually amended subsequently. And so what you see in the bill should actually read what I provided in the amendment. And the language that was left out is before the sentence describing the dam being at 227 feet high is unless a water level regime is established by the Commissioner of Environmental Protection pursuant to Title 38, Chapter 5, Subchapter 1, Article 3A, Subarticle 4. That language represents a 2006 change to the 2005 law that was not but should have been included in the bill. It references the provisions in the statutes under which the DEP Commissioner may establish a water level regime or minimum flow requirements for a body of water impounded by a dam. So I also did some, with the assistance of a researcher in my office, I did some legislative history on the corporation and this dam authorization. So the corporation was initially established in 1927. In 1961, it was authorized to construct a dam and fishways at the outlet on the north end of Phillips Lake. I've distributed that 1961 private and special law, but what I wanted to note was that law provided that the dam must be constructed and operated and maintained to hold the water level of Phillips Lake no higher than elevation 227 feet above sea level. That authorization and the 227-foot water level requirement existed without amendment from 1961 until its repeal in 1999. And so there was another private and special law passed in 1999 that was proposed by Representative Edward Povich of Ellsworth. I provided a copy of the bill file in that same email, which included his remarks. No others spoke on the bill or submitted testimony, and it was unanimously voted ought to pass by the committee. The remarks themselves were somewhat interesting in that, if I can just get to them real quick. He noted the bill, which would repeal the authorization to construct the dam and have it be at 227 feet, would alleviate potential problems facing the corporation within the town of Dedham. It comes to me at the request of the town of Dedham / Lucerne Code Enforcement Officer and the Board of Overseers. The bill also has a practical political aspect. Without the repeal of this law, many property owners on Phillips Lake might risk loss of value to their shorefront property. This law as written could ruin their beaches if it were ever enforced, which seems to suggest that the 1961 law may not have been enforced between then and 1999. As you heard, though, the repealed authorization in a slightly different form was essentially reenacted in 2005 and then amended in 2006 to give us that final law that I provided in the analysis. As described above in the analysis, because the bill as printed does not contain the most recent version of the private and special law, if the committee wishes to support the proposal, if applicable, I suppose, the bill should be amended to ensure that the most recent version of the law is amended. There is also an amendment that was described by Representative Tucker from the sponsor that's being proposed to address issues raised at the hearing. I've distributed that amendment separately in the same email. According to the corporation, it is at present working with DEP to do an inflow-outflow analysis of the lake and to assess the structural integrity of the dam and any need for repairs. In both written and oral testimony, the corporation expressed, among other things, its specific concern with the bill's proposal to have the corporation annually set the dam height, noting a concern over its potential liability for any resulting property damages, especially given the legal history described at the hearing. A landowner sued and prevailed against the corporation in 1999 for damages to property caused by high water levels. I understand that lawsuit may have also been tied to the 1999 repeal of the private and special law that existed before then. I've noted here there was a request for the work session from Representative Dudera, who asked whether there were any other instances of a lake water level being set by law. Private and special laws are sort of a little bit odd. You don't hear about them that much. And we're currently in a multi-year process of digitizing the card catalog on which the laws are kept track of at the revisor's office. This is a literal card catalog. There are cards for these private and special laws, and that's how we keep track of them. And as you can see, sometimes mistakes are made. So this was not, I suppose, an exhaustive search, but we were able to locate 3 different private and special laws I've described there that each relate to utility companies. So it's not the exact same situation, but there are laws that establish certain levels for different bodies of water. I've also noted that, as I described above, the Commissioner of Environmental Protection has the authority under Title 38, Section 840, to issue an order establishing a water level regime or minimum flow requirement for a body of water impounded by a dam. There's a whole process described in that chapter, actually, for how that can be done. So I think there are probably other bodies of water that have state-imposed water level regimes. They've just been imposed through that process and not through a private and special law. So I understand that's a lot of information. I'm happy to try to answer any of the questions that you have. I was not involved in the creation of the proposed amendment, so I'm not really in a great position to speak to it. But I was going to say, I'm not sure if the sponsor is here today. That doesn't look like it.
No, unfortunately, I don't see the sponsor here today. Yes, Representative Tucker.
Although the sponsor may not be here today, Mr. Lendell Rutherford, one of the overseers, is present. And I'd just like to hear a little report back as to what's going on, what kind of contacts are being made. Although we are committed, we've discussed not doing a vote. I simply would like to know what's going on. Thank you.
All right, curious minds would like to hear from Lindell Rutherford. Mr. Rutherford, welcome. It's nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Were you able to hear Representative Tucker's question before you were brought over?
I did. And Senator Brenner and Representative Tucker, thanks for the opportunity to speak again. I did speak with the bill sponsor after the public hearing, and we agreed on at least an idea of how the bill might be changed that would remove the Village of Lucerne's overseer's opposition to the bill. And that dealt with the language that specified that the lake height would be set at 227 feet at an annual town meeting. Our position is that's not an appropriate forum for establishing the lake level. And we think that Title 38, in fact, it's Section 843, Title 38, Chapter 5, Section 843, provides the authority for municipalities to manipulate or manage the dams under language that is established by ordinance and approved by the DEP. And that would be our preferred language to be inserted into the bill. We do not want to have an annual meeting every year to talk about dam height, and we believe that if it is part of the private special law, we'd be required to do so. So in addition to the fact it's not the right forum, it imposes I think a task for the city of the Village of Lucerne that we do not want to do. So I talked to the Representative O'Connell, who submitted the bill, and we agreed in essence on how to go forward. I have not seen any modifications to the bill at this point.
Senator Bennett.
Thank you. Question is, given the new information that's related in the analysis, where there is actually the commissioner of DEP already has the authority, as I'm reading this, and please correct me if I misunderstood, to vary the water height I wonder if it's necessary to even have a bill and deal with this in a legislative capacity yet again after many years, and just let the current system resolve the issue with respect to the Department of Environmental Protection. Let them work with and listen to whomever they wish to hear to exercise their authority. Is that a possible solution?
Well, I imagine anything's possible. Anybody have thoughts, responses? Mr. Rutherford?
Well, I think that effectively that's what we are suggesting. I think that we would like to see something in the special and private law while we're having the ordinance created. The ordinance will have to be created. It will have to be passed to the DEP for approval, and then it'll have to be passed here by local referendum of the Village of Lucerne, and that we may not want to strike the language in entirety at this point, but I think that would be our goal, to take it out of private and special law and solve the issues with the dam with the local ordinance approved by DEP.
Any other thoughts from the committee? All right. So, yes, Senator Bennett.
I'm happy to move to table.
A second on tabling? Representative Tucker, show of hands. All right. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Mr. Rutherford, for joining us. We
Thank you for having me.
Hearing how it goes. All right, and our last bill for work session on the schedule is, let me rephrase that. Our second to the last bill, because we have one that we're going to reconsider, is 946. It's noon right now. We have 2 bills to go. My sense is that we could take 5 minutes, come back, get through those 2 bills, and then you can have all afternoon to eat lunch unless you have another committee to go to. So I would like us to take 5 minutes and come back, and we'll finish our last 2 bills and then be done for lunch. All right, committee, if you're there, you'll want to turn your screens on. It's going to be lonely if it's just Dan and Senator Bennett and myself. Welcome back. All right. Thank you, everyone, for indulging me. And I believe we are ready to move on to LD 946.
So a couple of minutes ago, I sent you an email that had an analysis as well as a proposed amendment from the sponsor, as well as a 2019 letter from the Army Corps of Engineers to the City of Saco that she had also wanted to share with the committee. So LD 946 is a resolve to authorize Maine as the non-federal sponsor within the United States, with the United States Army Corps of Engineers for the shore damage mitigation project in Saco. It requires the governor to take all steps necessary for the state to be the non-federal sponsor with the Army Corps of Engineers for the shore damage mitigation project for the Saco River and Camp Ellis Beach in Saco. I tried to distill sort of some of the history of the issues into a couple paragraphs. I'll try to quickly go through it. From the testimony provided, the erosion and shore damage issues here primarily involve the area of Saco Bay surrounding the mouth of the Saco River, although the effects from these issues have been experienced more broadly within other neighboring communities on the bay. There are multiple entities with jurisdiction here, including the federal government due to a federal navigational channel out the mouth of the Saco River with the federal anchorage and harbor, the state and the city of Saco, which I refer to as the city in the analysis. In 1867, the Army Corps of Engineers constructed a stone jetty on the north side of the mouth of the Saco River. Since that time, due primarily to the jetty's alteration of wave action, current patterns, and sand deposits, the area has experienced significant erosion and other shoreline damage. To date, 38 houses and 2 streets in the city have been lost due to erosion, and the city spends upwards of $350,000 per year to address these issues. The city, the state, and the Army Corps of Engineers have engaged in multiple discussions and studies over the years to evaluate methods of addressing these issues. Pursuant to Section 111 of the Federal River and Harbor Act of 1968, the Army Corps of Engineers has undertaken a mitigation project to address these issues. And in 2007, Congress authorized a maximum federal expenditure of $26.9 million for the project. At present, it appears that the parties agree on proceeding with so-called Alternative 6 of the project plan, as developed in a July 2017 report, which would provide for the construction of a 750-foot stone spur jetty, largely perpendicular to the existing federal jetty and extending north toward Camp Ellis Beach, as well as associated beach nourishment activities. The sticking point seems to be that the Army Corps of Engineers is requiring the designation of a non-federal sponsor in order for the project to proceed. Although the $26.9 million has been authorized for the project, the non-federal sponsor would be required to assume responsibility for any project cost overages. According to the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry, those overages could include both overages during the actual project construction period, as well as any costs into the future associated with the project, such as multiple cycles of beach nourishment, which could reach tens of millions of dollars over the next 50 years. As I noted, the sponsor has submitted a proposed amendment to address concerns raised at the hearing. That amendment directs the governor to assist and support the city in the proposed project as its non-federal sponsor. So in other words, the city of Saco would be the non-federal sponsor, not the state. I've noted here that the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry, while supportive of the proposed project Alternative 6, is opposed to the state being directed to enter into a project partnership agreement with the Army Corps of Engineers as the non-federal sponsor for the project, because 1, the state has yet to see the details of that agreement, and 2, the state does not support an agreement that it sees as relieving the Army Corps of Engineers for any future responsibility or involvement with this issue, which it argues is unprecedented. A note here about non-federal sponsor: although the resolve directs the state to assume project responsibility as the non-federal sponsor, it was noted in a number of testimonies that the state is not the only entity that could become the non-federal sponsor. Although concern was expressed about the ability of the city to assume financial responsibility for the project as its non-federal sponsor, per the proposed amendment, it is apparently willing to take on that role. I can answer any questions about that analysis. Questions about the amendment would probably be better directed at the bill sponsor, who I believe is in the attendee space right now.
Yes, Representative Copeland is in the attendee space. We can move her over. Good morning, Representative Copeland.
Good morning, Madam Chair, and thank you for having me in again. The analyst really boiled it down nicely, so thank you. It's true that there is a separation of powers issue. We cannot direct the governor to do anything, so we're going to tweak that language to request. I've been back and forth with the Attorney General's office this morning several times. There is a very direct interest for the state of Maine, since Ferry Beach State Park is right here in, getting damaged every storm. So they have asked, and I think it's a good idea to table this, if you would be so kind, and give us 1 to 2 weeks, and we can work that language just a little bit tighter. And I know that there were some questions about the fiscal note on this. So we'll need to work that through with them, but overall, we don't feel like there is going to be any expenditure needed on the state of Maine's part. We will need some AG time. We're going to narrow the scope to asking the Attorney General to help with the drafting of the PPA, which has not happened yet. We need, the Army Corps is very clear in their path that they'd like to initiate that document, but I think it's critical for the state of Maine to be included in that negotiation because of Ferry Beach State Park. So we'd like to table this, if you wouldn't mind, if you would be agreeable.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Bloom.
Thank you. Representative Copeland, thank you. It seems like SACO then has decided that they can be the non-federal sponsor. I mean, the non-federal partner. Is that correct?
That is correct. In terms of signing on the private partnership agreement, the federal government only, they specifically want our community to. So I believe the city council has proposed that go forward in that direction. But the state is needed to, good afternoon. Oh, sorry, I got another Zoom. The state is needed to support the whole community. So there are some shoreline dune building and so forth that we can do. But
so it does. So they won't. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Luke.
I apologize for interrupting you. May I follow up, please? Yeah. So I would agree with you. Then it sounds like you've gotten the wheels turning. I'm very glad to hear that, and that you feel like you're getting some support in the realm that you need. And I would support your and make the motion to table the bill.
I'll second that motion.
A show of hands. All right. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Representative Copeland. We look forward to hearing what you all come up with, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Yes, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate the support.
All right. And so last up is 780. So let's see. Let's refresh ourselves about 780. Dan,
did you want me to?
Yes, please.
Sure. So I believe this was voted last week, about 100 years ago, it feels like. This is LD 780, an act regarding uncontrolled hazardous substance sites. This was a DEP bill about uncontrolled hazardous substance sites. The vote was, at the time of the vote, it was 7 ought to pass. I think it was ought to pass, and 3 ought not to pass, and then there were 3 absent.
And so I think what we have is a request for a reconsideration and an amendment. Yes, Senator Bennett.
Madam Chair, having voted on the prevailing side, I move to reconsider our vote.
Is there a second? Representative Tucker seconds. And we'll need to do a roll call for the reconsideration. Sabrina, are you with us? Yes, Representative Tucker. You're muted, Representative.
It might be nice if Dan could explain what the change is. We're gonna change one phrase.
That's right.
I'd just like to have Dan explain it so everybody's on the same wavelength.
Prior to reconsideration. Great.
I would defer to Senator Bennett.
Okay. Senator Bennett, do you want to explain your amendment?
Sure. I just don't know whether you wanted me to do that prior to reconsideration or not, but maybe people want to decide whether they want to reconsider based on what I'm going to offer. As you may remember, I asked a bunch of questions about this, and I left the last work session uncertain and unsure and undecided, and I had subsequent conversations at length with Commissioner Loisem and with Dan and others, and had the concerns I was expressing alleviated extraordinarily. There was just one area that I wanted to pursue, and I had asked about the use of the term best management practices within statute. And my concern was that best management practices as an undefined term can actually be, change over time and could be interpreted by department leadership that may not be as enlightened as our current one is about this topic. And so I have prepared an amendment with Dan's help that would change out best management practices language in two places and replace it with references to current title and current rules. And so if we move to reconsider, then I will move for those amendments.
Thank you for that. Very helpful.
Thank you.
So we have a motion on the floor with a second to reconsider LD 780, which is an act regarding uncontrolled hazardous substance sites. I believe we're ready for a vote.
Senator Brenner.
Yes. Whoops. Representative, let's pause for a second. Representative O'Connor?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. That was really fast. I thought we were going to hear a little bit more, but I just wanted to say that I will be switching my vote on this because of what Senator Bennett has done was one of the things I was hesitant on this before, not just for that reason, but I can live with the reason that I know we have other PFAS bills coming forward, and I really wanted to be able to deliberate them all together. However, that's now water under the bridge, and I look forward to voting to this bill. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Representative O'Connor. I'm glad we paused because it was nice to hear your words. Okay, Sabrina.
All right, let's start over. Senator Brenner.
Yes.
Representative Tucker.
Yes.
Senator Bennett.
Yes.
Representative Hanley.
Yes.
Senator Carney, absent. Representative Bell.
Yes.
Representative Bloom.
Yes.
Representative Dudera.
Yes.
Representative Gramlich, absent. Representative Johansson,
Yes.
Representative O'Connor,
Yes.
Representative Toole, absent. Representative Ziegler,
Yes.
10 yes, 3 absent.
Okay. Yes, Representative Bennett. Or sorry, Senator Bennett.
Thank you. I wasn't going to speak until I was addressed properly.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. No, thank you. I just wanted to present the amendment, and I don't know if, Dan, have you distributed that to the committee, or would it be appropriate to do that now? And everybody can see it, and I'd like to propose that amendment, move its move whatever it is, its passage or adoption in the committee, move to amend the bill as amended.
Would you like to vote ought to pass as amended with your amendment that was just sent by Dan? Is that, yeah.
Yeah, so I think now having reconsidered it, the motion, the original motion is on the floor, which was ought to pass as amended. So now I am moving to amend the amendment.
Great.
And so I would first move to amend the amendment with my amendment.
Okay. Does everybody, yes, Dan?
It was the prior vote was actually just ought to pass. So this would be just your amendment.
All right, thank you. Thanks for the correction. That simplifies things. I move to ought to pass as amended, or I move to amend the ought to pass motion. I think that's the appropriate thing.
Do we have a second?
I second that motion.
Any discussion? All right, I believe we're ready for a vote. The question on the floor is ought to pass as amended.
Senator Brenner,
Yes.
Representative Tucker,
Yes.
Senator Bennett,
Yes.
Representative Hanley,
Yes.
Senator Carney, absent. Representative Bell,
Yes.
Representative Bloom,
Yes.
Representative Dudera,
Yes.
Representative Gramlich, absent. Representative Johansson,
Yes.
Representative O'Connor,
Yes.
Representative Toole, absent. Representative Ziegler,
Yes.
10 yes, 3 absent.
Madam Chair, may I just make a comment?
Please.
I just want to thank, in particular, Representative Tucker for, I know that this bill has meant a lot and it's been sitting around for a long time, and I appreciate your giving me a little bit of chance to get up to speed and letting me educate myself. And I hope the bill now with a unanimous report will be favorably received in the chambers.
Representative Tucker?
Thank you very much, Senator Bennett. I appreciate your remarks. Thanks.
All right, committee, I believe that brings us to the end of our work for today. Yes, Dan. Yes.
This is
You're all
probably
moving around all of a sudden with your hands. Sorry.
probably poor timing to jump in right now. I don't want to jump in front of the other representatives, but we had planned to have a brief discussion of the Government Evaluation Act review.
You got to put that on the email to remind me. Just kidding. Okay, we can fit it in for sure. Representative Hanley.
Yes, thank you, Senator. This is in relation to LD 226. I want to request a letter from this committee to them to investigate the possibility, a study of a fee implemented on refrigerants imported into the state and how that money collected could be set aside and used to alleviate the leakage of these gases. And I'm asking for a report back from that from Maine Efficiency Trust. Is that as clear as mud?
Representative Tucker.
No, it's very clear, and I can see that Dan is assiduously writing down every word that you said. So I agree with your request. Now, do we need to have a vote on this, or can we just do it? What do you think, Mr. Tartikoff?
Whatever you'd like to do. That sometimes committees take votes on letters. We try not to get those votes to be combined with substantive votes, but however you'd like to reach agreement. I would, of course, come up with a letter draft and maybe run it by Representative Hanley first and then bring it back to the full committee as a draft, and then everyone can make sure they're okay with signing on to it.
Let's
But
do it.
if people object to it in principle, it would be good to know now.
I don't think that we need to have a debate about it. Just get that letter written up, see if Representative Hanley likes it, and then circulate it with everybody.
Representative Dudera, did you have a comment?
I did. Thank you. I am going to be humming all day long, thanks to Representative Hanley, because I think he started to say, "I second that emotion." And I have that in my head. I second that emotion. So thank you.
It was more emotion than motion on my part, so I appreciate that.
I'm so glad you picked that up and shared it with us. Okay, so last things will be our review. Do you want to present that to us, Dan, now?
Sure. So understanding that we have extended past where we would normally break for lunch and that everyone's probably eager to be done with this, I have sent you an OPLA document summarizing the State Government Evaluation Act. And from a broad sense, this is a law that was put into place a number of years ago to provide for the periodic evaluation of state government agencies by the legislature. There is a set schedule for each agency where the committee of jurisdiction is noted. And for this committee, there are a couple of agencies under its jurisdiction. One of them is the Saco River Corridor Commission, who you recall hearing from during the budget process and orientation, I think. But every 8 years, each agency is subject to a review unless the committee were to exempt it from review or propose a different review timeline. But essentially, within a 2-year legislature, within the first regular session, those agencies that are subject to review by a committee have to be notified of the committee's intent to conduct the review by May 1st of the first regular session. I know we're not in a first regular session anymore, but we're assuming that date still applies. So by May 1st, we would have to notify the Saco Commission that the committee intends to conduct a review of it. And what that would trigger is the review process internally at the agency, where they would compile and submit by November 1st of this year a program evaluation report. And all the items that are required to be included in that report are set out in statute in the Government Evaluation Act. And then sometime in 2022, the committee would conduct a formal review where typically a representative of the agency would come in and would go through the report, answer any questions the committee has, and then the committee would make recommendations. Usually those recommendations are just to find that the agency is acting within its statutory authority, but sometimes there are changes that may be required by the committee. There was, I believe it was last legislature, or maybe the one before, they're blending together. There was a GEA done of the Board of Environmental Protection and the Department of Environmental Protection, and there was about 4 or 5 bills that came out of that process to make minor tweaks to the different authorities, et cetera. So it's not always just a rubber stamp, although in many instances it sort of is. But all the committee has to decide right now is whether or not to initiate the review and send a letter. And I've included a copy of the letter sent to the Saco River Corridor Commission in 2013, basically telling it that the committee is going to conduct a review and that the statute sets out the process and that the program evaluation report is due in November. So if you would prefer to take a little more time to review the materials, we could perhaps plan a discussion for maybe first or last thing on Monday, and then send the letter out still before May 1st, or if everyone, I know some of you are more familiar with this process than others. If you're okay just directing me to send the letter out now, we can go ahead and do that too.
Does the committee? Yes, Representative Tucker has a comment.
Having been on the receiving end of these letters as a commissioner earlier, sometimes it's perceived as a real pain in the neck by the agency. However, there is an excellent purpose for this review law beyond just us getting information. Once the agency gets over there having to do all the work, it's a real chance for them to look within themselves and outline exactly what their goals are and what their purpose is. And it can have a beneficial effect within the agency itself, a time to pause and think about where they are and where they're going. So even if we don't do much in response to the report serves that function. The second function is the public at large and the interest groups who follow a particular agency. It's a report that benefits the public in general, as well as us. And I think it's a really good idea, frankly. So I would be for sending out the letter now. But obviously, if the committee wants to discuss it some more, that's fine too.
Senator Bennett.
I just want to say I thoroughly, completely agree with Representative Tucker on all of his points, and I think we should just press ahead, and it gives us more time to the agency.
Is there any opposition to sending out a letter? All right. Let's send a letter. Okay, I think this is it. Thank you all for a great morning. Have a lovely afternoon, and we will see you all again on Monday. Take care.